Since you're more of a visual learner, I'm going to use educational props this time. So pay attention. This is me, Lo-Wang. Yeah, it doesn't look exactly like me, but you get the idea.
Shadow Warrior 3 starts off with the main character, Lo-Wang, recapping the story of basically the second game leading up to the third, being this one. It starts off really funny with Lo-Wang just chilling in his fucking whitey tighties talking to Hoji's mask and basically flashbacking into the dragon and like him fighting it. The first weapon you get though is the Magnum pistol, and these enemies right here are basically the generic fodder enemies that you'll be fighting throughout the game called Shogai, which kind of bum rush you and do melee attacks. There's like a couple different varieties of them. Some of them have elemental barrels on their back that explode conveniently. The second weapon though that's introduced is the 4-barrel freaking shotgun. This thing is so satisfying. Just the sound design and just the way this thing kicks back and shreds through enemies like Swiss cheese. It is a really good shotgun, and it just feels really good. Like all the weapons have a good weight to them with the sound and just the way they animate and the way they like react with enemies when you shoot them. Just how much gore there is in this game. It's just good enemy feedback, like pushing the enemies into the spikes. You have environmental kills. There's just a lot of variety in the arena-style combat that Shadow Warrior 3 is going for. One new thing though that Lo-Wang has in his skill repertoire is wall running, sliding, and dashing. Very similar to Doom Eternal. The arena combat I think is going for that too, to have that Doom Eternal fast-paced, just no holds barred, straight up action style to the game, which honestly I am really digging for Shadow Warrior 3. Once the game recaps the prologue for you, Zilla makes an appearance, and he is not your enemy this time, ironically. And this cutscene is just hilarious.
Wang!
What the fuck?
Is that Hoji's mask? Are you talking to the mask of that traitorous knob?
No. Maybe. What do you care?
I don't. Not really.
Why not? That dragon destroyed everything you ever built and decimated the citizens of Zilla City! The Zillions, Zilla! The Zillions are all gone!
What happened to you on that dragon, Lo-Wang?
I think I lost my mojo.
I have his mojo.
The basic gist of the story now is that Lo-Wang and Zilla are teaming up to basically destroy the dragon together and put aside their differences from the past to basically save the world. Pretty typical and simple for a game like Shadow Warrior. One thing that Flying Wild Hog went all out on is the finishers in this game. Once you build up your meters for the finishers at the bottom left of your HUD, around that circle icon, you can perform finishers pretty much in any enemy that you come across in the game. The upgrade system in Shadow Warrior 3 is very simple. There's 2 tabs that correspond to character and weapon upgrades. You pick up these orbs littered throughout the environment, and most of the upgrades are pretty standard fare. You'll upgrade your katana to have elemental damage, you'll upgrade ammo capacity on guns. Everything is very simplistic. The only bad side is that there's not a lot of depth to it. I was definitely looking for more upgrades down the line to just have more variety than what I think I was gonna get with some of the upgrades, and it wound up just hurting the experience more for me, I feel like, on that aspect. The one thing I love though about Shadow Warrior is moments like this in the game. They just put a smile on my face. The next gadget you pick up in Shadow Warrior 3 is a grappling hook. it wouldn't be an FPS game in 2022 if you didn't have one. What I like is that it's really quick recharging, and you use it to get around in the environment pretty quickly, which I like. The arenas you fight in Shadow Warrior 3 are very well designed. They just beautifully capture the fast-paced combat and brutal action of Shadow Warrior with elemental barrels and just dozens and dozens of enemies on screen at a time coming at you. That just goes to show how well the engine keeps up with everything and keeps it at a stable frame rate, to be honest, because I never had any issues whatsoever playing the game. Everything was just so smooth and fluid for me throughout my whole experience with Shadow Warrior 3. The enemy variety is so good in Shadow Warrior 3, in my opinion, just because there's just enough enemy types that you'll be fighting, and it really brings a lot of variety with their attacks and movements, and it makes you have to prioritize what targets you're gonna kill first, or you will honestly just take so much damage, especially if you're playing on higher difficulties in the game. The story in Shadow Warrior 3 is pretty decent. It doesn't really have too much depth to it, which makes total sense. I mean, all the Shadow Warrior games, being classic and the remakes, never had crazy stories with, you know, amazing writing, but they get the job done. This part basically shows a new character, Motoko, and her pet raccoon, who's like a spirit animal, being a tanuki, obviously, in Japanese lore. Hoji is basically resurrected, but they wanted to use him in a bad way, kinda, I guess, to use his energy while killing his chi power. So obviously Lo-Wang just couldn't sit back and let that happen.
Break the spell, spoiling whatever chance we have to take that dragon down.
You knew this could happen. Has this always been your plan?
If you want to be a hero, Lo-Wang, you need to make sacrifices.
Fuck you! I'm not gonna let you kill my friend.
Lo-Wang, wait!
Some of the cutscenes in Shadow Warrior 3 are honestly so dumb and corny. You just can't help but sometimes just wanna laugh out loud at some of the silly antics between Hoji and Lo-Wang. There's such a funny ass combo, man. I love seeing them in the cutscenes together.
It's bigger than I remember.
That's what she said.
Like I said before, Shadow Warrior 3's enemies are really creative and unique. Just like this laser shogun character that is like a mechanical samurai helmet that has moving parts inside and is just honestly probably the most annoying enemy in the game. I literally would always get almost one-tapped by these enemies playing on a hard difficulty. After you perform a finisher move on them, though, you get their mechanical heart, which is like a proximity grenade that shoots out almost like a disco ball of lasers, which is pretty damn cool. Just like I said before, also, the finisher weapons that you get from enemies are strategical for the combat in the game. They can help you out and change firefights in an instant, which is really cool. I really like that feature in Shadow Warrior 3. There's just so many awesome reference moments in Shadow Warrior 3 that just bring a huge smile to my face just seeing them happen in some of the cutscenes.
Yeah, no, not that
glad you're here, buddy.
You son of a bitch.
One of my favorite enemies, though, has to be the Seeking Shokera enemy, just because their gore weapon that you get is their eyeball that is basically a Seeking razor blade that wherever you point your crosshair, it basically attacks enemies and kind of eats them alive or like cuts them up with the blades on the eyeball, which is so damn sick. Like I was said before, Shadow Warrior 3 is very creative in that aspect, and I just love the combat in the game. The new features that have been brought to the table compared to the second game's kind of open-ended looter shooter style, this is just such a difference in tone, and this is probably already shaping up to be my favorite Shadow Warrior remake in the whole series so far. Most of the arenas have these death trap triggers that you can shoot that'll basically spawn or start up these death traps that'll basically kill any enemy that's caught in them. They're super satisfying to use, and I found myself using them a good bit, especially when things kind of got hairy in some of the bigger arena battles like this one, where the game pretty much insinuates or kind of nudges you to obviously use them. Just by telling the way of the arena and like the movement that you'll have, you'll probably want to use them whenever you can to get an upper hand. Another enemy that is just so cool in design are these Slinkies. They play very defensive, and they're exactly the enemy type that is kind of like a trickster class for the game, where they kind of run around the map and don't really attack you head on, but they'll plant these saw blade traps throughout the map while you're moving, and they move very quickly and kind of hide and taunt you while you're fighting. Their gore weapon that comes out of them is probably one of the best, I think, in my opinion, just because it does a lot of damage, and when it dies off at the end, it kind of shoots off this proximity of fireworks, which kind of destroys most of the enemies in the vicinity. A new weapon that Lo-Wang picks up has to be hands down my favorite weapon in the whole game. It shoots shurikens that literally bore through enemies, just like the weapon from Turok, aka the Cerebral Boar, suitably named. This thing is so satisfying to use and just see enemies kind of get stunned and just kind of paralyzed while the shurikens are tearing through them. It's really brutal and just honestly a great weapon addition to the game. The first boss battle in Shadow Warrior 3 was kind of underwhelming in my opinion. You fight this big chicken man creature type thing that shoots lasers at you, dashes at you, and kind of ground pounds. The enemy AI, or the boss AI, is pretty good. I mean, the thing is, you just, once you get like the rhythm down of what the attacks are, you get used to the patterns. And I mean, it appears pretty easy, I guess, at that point. But the coolest part of the battle has to be when you finish the phase 1 and it splits in half, and then the real boss battle begins, in my opinion. Like, just take a look at how creepy this is. Once the phase 2 ends, you get this cinematic rush type of event you have to do in parkouring, where you just basically grab onto the chicken and finish it off. With Lo-Wang just looking like a straight up pimp, obviously, killing off that chicken in usual fashion for Lo-Wang. Hoji and Lo-Wang were looking for that egg that apparently dragons lay. Only something you would see in a Shadow Warrior game, because apparently dragons lay demon eggs. And you start the chase sequence with the egg, which I'll get into in a second, because I kind of hated these padding sections throughout the game of just Lo-Wang kind of just parkouring, and it's just really slow and somber type feeling, which kind of breaks up the action, I guess. But they wound up just feeling like padding to me, nothing more. Once you make it to the dragon, you find this chi-powered machine that Hoji talks about using against the dragon. Obviously, things go haywire, and Hoji kinda over-assesses the situation and the dragon's power, and, you know, things happen, and Hoji winds up failing at basically using the machine against it. There is a decent amount of environment variety. You wind up traveling through this jungle type area, and there is a good variety. The thing is, the game is just so short that there was so much potential that could have been done with Shadow Warrior 3. That's the worst part about the game, for sure, is that it's just so short. You can beat the game if you are honestly accustomed to FPSs like this within 4 to 5 hours, easily. And the thing is, you wind up wanting more from the game because there's just so much potential here with the combat and the style and the enemies and just the gameplay of the game, how it's been shifted into an arena-based combat game. It winds up just hurting itself with the lack of content. You have such varied enemy design, like this fat blob enemy that looks just like a Mancubus from Doom Eternal, which obviously it probably is a enemy that's just like that enemy class from Doom, but it has these miniguns that you can rip off of it once you perform a finisher that spews like acid, which is pretty damn fun. The game just hinders itself from having so many good qualities like this, with finishers, a really cool art style, great combat, good arena design, great enemy design, and good guns and good sound design. It's just the fact that the content is just non-existent with the amount of time you can beat the campaign in. I'm just hoping that Flying Wild Hog has something up their sleeve regarding at least some DLC for the game. Something like even Wanton Destruction that, you know, Shadow Warrior Classic had, which was, you know, maybe not the greatest DLC, but it was pretty fun though, and it was just content for the game. Just more content and more Wang is obviously a good thing. I'm just hoping and praying that they don't miss their opportunity to keep the game still going and just make the campaign be just longer than what it is. It definitely needs some DLC, man, to make the game just longer and more enjoyable. I think a lot of the fans of the old remakes definitely were kinda distraught and just had a bad taste in their mouth after playing through the game, only to find out that it's so short. And I did too. I'm just hoping and praying that Flying Wild Hog realizes all that.
Every step of the way, except for, you know, that last one. You're gonna be a legend, buddy. They might even turn you into an action figure. All right, you fuzzy little creep. It's showtime!
Once you and the cute Tanuki raccoon progress towards the dragon together, obviously everything goes wrong that you would expect to go wrong for Lo-Wang. The Tanuki dies inside the dragon, and you're left to have to do it all by yourself, pretty much. This part of the game was really cool, in my opinion. The environments are really cool. I love that you were climbing basically on the dragon, and the arenas you were fighting in were basically on top of the dragon's back while you're making your way towards it. I think it's really cool design and just honestly a really cool concept. Another big letdown though has to be the final boss for Shadow Warrior 3. When I got to this, I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be something really crazy. This is gonna be an epic boss battle. Inside the dragon's heart, like this is gonna be alls out, actually nuts. But unfortunately, it was just the simple boss battle where you kind of shoot the weak points and just circle strafe around it till you kind of kill it. I mean, it was still fun and still challenging and still cool, but I was hoping for a little bit more, honestly. It just felt very anticlimactic compared to the actual arena fights throughout the whole campaign. I just wanted something more challenging, maybe, and something more unique than just a generic boss battle like this.
Surprisingly, you're not the ugliest thing I've killed.
Once you get the boss in its final weakened stage, just when it's about to die, you drop down on a spring pad and once again start parkouring. Sometimes, like right there, like you're looking at, you won't stick onto the walls, which is really frustrating. But once you just get back to kind of situate yourself, I mean, you're perfectly fine. I just kind of really didn't like the parkouring sections. That's what I'm getting at here. Once again, that it just felt like it was just way too overused. Like the grappling hook mechanic was way overused with the wall running. It just felt kind of stale after the 30th time I was kind of doing the same thing again, and they just didn't kind of make the parkouring refreshing enough and like varied. It just hindered the gameplay overall for the game. And the sad part is that Lo-Wang is one of my favorite characters from FPS games. I just love his wacky and really silly humor, and I've always just loved the character, you know, being put in situations that are over the top and badass, and he just winds up persevering through them regardless of what's happening. That's just Lo-Wang in a nutshell. This might be a hot take, but Shadow Warrior 3 is my favorite game out of the 3 remakes, just because it feels like Flying Wild Hog really toned into making the game have a focused gameplay style instead of just, you know, kind of being a looter shooter where you would discard your weapons like in the second game and kind of move on to something greater and better. The action was just more refined and fast paced instead of kind of trekking from point A to point B, you know, and then backtracking, etc., etc. Like, it just felt like the game had purpose, but then at the same time, it just wound up hurting itself with all of the negative aspects, whether it was the short duration or just the repetitive gameplay mechanics that were kind of overused. The game has awesome finishers and just so much going for it with the visceral and brutal combat the game has. It's just such a good time to play Shadow Warrior 3. It's just such a shame that the game is bogged down by really long and repetitive parkouring sections that only hindered the experience.
Whoa!
But overall, I had such a good time with Shadow Warrior 3 just because Lo-Wang is so freaking goofy as usual, and he'll never be taken seriously as a character, and that's who Lo-Wang is. He's just a foul-mouthed, silly protagonist that, you know, always has encompassed Asian culture with a very satirical type of outlook, and that's always been prevalent since the era of Shadow Warrior Classic from the build engine days. I'm just hoping that Flying Wild Hog realizes their mistakes with this game currently, and I really hope they put out some DLC for the game just to make the game longer and more enjoyable for the fans that were yearning for something more. As usual, guys, take care of yourselves. Peace.